All right, episode two. Well, I guess we've done a few more talk data to me's, but episode two in the series that I'm doing on AI, and I guess the reality of AI. I think there's so much, as I said in the previous video, that there's so much hype going on. But I want to look at the real side of things. So joining me today is Mark Stent, Safa, based in the UK, just overall good guy. Mark, thanks so much for joining me. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Good to thanks for having me, Craig. Good to see you, man. All the way up from Brighton in the UK, actually.
Nice one. Good part of the world, actually, down
Very much,
Brighton.
very
Yeah.
much so. Love it.
And I think for
What's up?
any football fans out there, I think Manchester United still got to play Brighton and likely to get about 7-0 against Brighton. They're just awful at the moment. So
I believe so. I'm not a soccer supporter, but one of the guys at my gym, his son actually plays for Brighton, and he always talks about it. So that's how I know a little about it.
yeah. I'm a long-suffering Manchester United fan. Now, let's move swiftly along from that. Mark, maybe just give everybody a little bit of background into what it is that you do. We're going to talk a little bit about music and AI and music later on. I
Mm,
mean, first and foremost, you're a big music guy,
yes, for
but what do you
sure.
kind of do for your day job?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a story. So right now, I'm associate director of analytics at the for the Publicis Group, one of their media agencies here in London, and really my job is to work in analytics in the marketing industry, with a particular task towards AIifying, if you want to call it that, and using AI and analysis going forward. So my background is a little bit colorful. I mean, as you say, I was in the music industry for 15 years, a producer running a label. And over COVID, I kind of fell into data science. I have a maths degree already before that in statistics, and I did a master's degree in AI, and fell completely in love with this side of the world. And we'll chat about music later on, but I did my dissertation actually on AI generated music. So it's an interesting topic. And when I moved over to London, I moved into Publicis. I was in academia before that, teaching a master's degree in data science and analytics before that.
Nice one. Well, definitely qualified for the conversation for sure. So
Maybe.
there we go. Cool. All right. So one of the key things we wanted to go into today, and we chatted about sort of in the prep for this call, is sort of, let's say a concept, but the sort of drive towards AI maturity and AI literacy in organizations. Maybe let's take a few steps back and kind of just, I think, context for the previous conversation I had in this series was really around operational readiness, business readiness, data readiness for AI before you really get into the AI maturity side. I mean, I think it kind of, one kind of drives the other. Where are you guys at in terms of your operational readiness for AI? You talk about trying to AIify the business. What have been the building blocks to get to that point? It's not just like we've done nothing and now all of a sudden we're jumping into AI. What are the foundations of the business to get you to this point?
Yeah, I think so. Firstly, obviously, we need to talk about the shiny toy syndrome, right? And that's what AI is at the moment in business, anyway. And I think, in terms of fun, there's lots of cool stuff going on. Large language models. There's audio, there's images, but in terms of actual business use cases, there's not a lot of them, and we are moving towards that direction. And I think if you ask anybody, nobody can really define exactly what AI is doing or what AI actually is. Because nobody's 100% sure. It's like everybody knows it's going to be the thing, but nobody knows what it's going to do. So exactly as you said there, Publicists, I think, are quite forward thinking the way they do things. And obviously they've got, the requisite data scientists and AI engineers, ML engineers, that kind of thing. Sure, we've got those in place, the technical side. But truthfully, as you alluded to before, we need to be preparing for what happens. And obviously that is a big process, right? And you can't just start from nowhere. You've got to get the foundations right first. And I think credit to Publicis, what they're doing really well here is they've started from the bottom up, right? As we prepare for the era of AI. I mean, again, we are using some of the apps that are doing AI types of things, but it's really got to be adopted from the bottom up. And I think what I liked about them is they're adopting a bottoms up approach, right? So if we go to our intranet, there's lots of information and lots of learning and understanding of how you can apply AI, what it is, what it's actually doing, what it can do, what it can't do. What does it do with data protection? So like a learning. So you mentioned data literacy. I feel like that's the first step. And at Publicis, what they're doing is they are taking everyone from every side of the business. So if you're in sales, if you are in media planning, if you're in accounting, HR, whatever it is, we've got a section in our intranet that is like AI for HR, AI for sales, and there's relevant content to what you do. And what they're also doing is they're encouraging us to share internally and on our groups how we are individually using these things to take our company forward. And what's nice about this is it almost creates this togetherness of like maybe people that are interested in AI, that it's not part of their job to kind of have a voice. So I think they are building AI up from the bottom up. And when and if it becomes ready, by that time, the whole company will already be so used to using it. I mean, we've got ChatGPT, we've got the sandbox, we're encouraged to use the models and build things inside the company and then share them with each other. So they're building this kind of environment where AI is just part of the conversation. So I think that's kind of I feel like that's probably the first step to go forward in terms of that.
And I think almost the cornerstone of all of that really is culture, right? Because you can
Right.
put all of those things onto the internet, AI for HR, sales, media production, whatever it may be. If people are not interested or they're not encouraged or they don't see the benefit that comes from it, it's not, as you say, it's not part of the language of the organization from the top down, bottom up. How's that culture been created around that? Why would someone in HR care to go and hop onto the internet and learn about AI? Is there sort of a motivating factor for them? Is it sort of business benefits, or is it sort of just, hey guys, this is a really interesting thing and we really encourage you to learn? Is it
I think there's
sort
a
of
mix. There's a mix, and I love that word that you use, the culture, because I think that describes it 100%. And luckily, at Publicis, there is a culture for growth, for learning, for new technology. I mean, they're at the forefront of what they do in marketing, and I think you only get there, right, by keeping up with things. So already that culture is there. But what I do like is they're always sending us emails reminding us of what can be done. It's always sitting somewhere in all the conversations, in our company meetings, small ones, large ones. Internet's full of it, and it's really done in a very exciting way. We've got a really cool intranet, a learning environment there, and the videos are really put together well. Like, they're interesting. They're not boring. Nobody has to do anything. Nobody's forced, but the vibe, the culture, it drives towards that, and I think, like you said, a lot of people get very comfortable in what they're doing, and to try to get people to learn in things they don't understand, I think what they're doing is talking to people where they are at the moment.
Yeah. And who owns that? Because I imagine a lot of people watching this are like, that sounds great. I wish we had that. Who does that in our organization? Some chief data officers might be like, is that my job? Is it the learning and development team's job? Who owns this drive of AI literacy
I
in the
think
organization?
And I stand corrected because I'm not 100% sure in my company, but I don't think it's the chief data strategist that are doing that. We have an internal team for learning. So I think it's kind of their task to drive it, because then it doesn't feel contrived and forced.
Yeah.
If your boss tells you you have to do it, then you may drag your heels necessarily. But this is kind of encouraged. Do it if you like, don't do it if you don't want to, but always reminding us where it is and how exciting it actually is. And adding some of the fun stuff too, right? Like, because we still play with some of the video models, that type of thing. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily inside the data teams. In order for you to adopt it across everywhere, it needs to be with everyone. I mean, as a data person, somebody who's not necessarily in that field may feel a little bit intimidated by it. So I think they've done it very cleverly, and I think that it's quite reachable. That's
Yeah.
the word I was looking for.
And I think that's quite critical, because AI can be perceived as being very technical, very scary, very mathematical, statistical. I need to know about regression and all this sort of stuff. But I'm not just in HR. I focus on the people side of things, or I focus on sales. Do I really need to know about how these models work? Because it's sort of more just around, this is how it's actually going to help you do your job better and help you be more efficient, more productive, all these sorts of things. So I think we'll talk about it, but like, the human in the loop is still really important, right?
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. And it's about kind of saying to people, look, we don't expect you to know how the model and how this works from the nuts and bolts side. Just understand how you can apply it and use it. Are you finding that people are like really grasping that and saying, yeah, cool, I'm definitely going to hop onto this chat GPT or AI or whatever, because I can sell more, I can be better at media or content creation, whatever it may be.
I think what's important as well is like obviously letting people play with those tools, but also teaching them about what they can't do and the ramifications of not using them properly. So we are made very clear, ChatGPT is cool, but sharing private data inside the company is absolutely, they
Yeah.
remind us constantly that that is not great because we also don't know. I mean, I'm sure OpenAI are very honest with the way they train their data, but also we don't know that, right? So
Yeah.
we are encouraged to use ChatGPT, but specifically the area that is earmarked for us to make sure that the data doesn't get shared with
Mm.
other people. So I think what's important is people need to learn. You can, as much as you may be able to do great things, you can also cause a lot of damage and cause a
Yeah.
lot of reputational problems. So I think that just jumps back to the data literacy, understanding like what can go wrong, data privacy, like the cornerstones, build those cornerstones.
Yeah, yeah. And I think kind of it's not been released yet, but my previous guest, Bramley from Sassel, talked about the playbook that they've written for AI, generative AI within the organization. And a lot of it was around the guardrails. Like this is very, very useful technology. It's going to be great for the business, but there are rules. We do need to still govern it. It's not a free for all. And I think that'll ultimately make it more powerful and less susceptible to people going, actually, that's too scary. I don't want to use that because it's really screwed something up. You've got to at least have some sort of framework and guardrails in place, right?
Absolutely. I agree with that completely. And there's loads of frameworks that are coming out. They're quite interesting, a lot of them. And I think it's, if you embrace it, it can be so exciting more than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's talk a little bit then about just quickly the AI maturity side of things. This is something that's coming up a lot at the moment, and it's data maturity is obviously the first part of that. And then we move on to the AI maturity. How would you define AI maturity? Like, where is it going? And how do you know when you're mature in your AI initiatives and deployment in your organization?
Sure, that's a heavy question. That's a very heavy question because I think it's quite subjective, the data
Yeah,
maturity at the moment. And I think your data is mature when it's ready to be used in a way that doesn't cause harm, that adds value, that is easy to gather, and that creates the insights that you need and helps you to leverage and make things happen in a more streamlined manner. So an example is truthfully, 99% of companies are not at data maturity stage yet because a lot of the models that we use, you get the black box models, the models that are superb, but they're not easy to understand. And then you get the white box, so to speak, models that are, like you mentioned, regression, that are very easy to explain. And if you were in a bank, for argument's sake, and you applied for a loan and my model rejected you, you would absolutely want to know why, right? Now, with a black box model, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell why. And we're not at the stage yet where we can tell inside deep learning models because they've got hundreds of millions of parameters. But a regression model, we could actually say, oh, well, the reason your loan was rejected because your credit score was bad. And we can actually show the importance of those variables where they are. So currently in production, that's really what maturity looks like in AI and predictive modeling. And I think, but researchers going forward and they're able to map these things very technically. So I think we will get there eventually.
yeah, yeah. You talked there a bit around the integrity and ethics of AI because it is very powerful. Has the potential to add a lot of value, has the potential to do a lot of harm potentially as well. How are you kind of managing the integrity and ethics around you? Because obviously you're using a lot of customer data, campaign data, all that sort of thing. You know a lot about people. How do you kind of bake in that integrity and ethics?
I
Um,
think, I guess one of the better ways is there's a little bit of fear that comes into those things because
yeah.
truthfully, fear is a bit of a motivator, but not in a negative way. Sharing examples where it has gone wrong. I mean, I'm sure you've read about some of the examples in ChatGPT where they've broken the guardrails and they've actually managed to get data sets
Mm,
out from banks and that type of thing with specific names and
yeah.
credit card numbers. So kind of sharing knowledge is power. Like if you know that if I share one of my clients is Meta, if I share Meta's data,
Yeah.
like maybe it won't come out, but models are not infallible, right? And OpenAI is still learning as they go along. And then maybe in a year's time, that data, that little spreadsheet that I shared, it may come out, So, and obviously the ramifications of that are heavy. Reputational damage, I think, is the biggest problem that can come through AI. So I think, again, it boils down to the same thing. Knowledge is power, really.
Yeah. So that kind of, I guess, is part of the whole AI literacy program, right? It's not just how this is going to help your part of the business, you to do your job better, but this is how to use it ethically. These are the things you really cannot do. You talked obviously about, data privacy, data protection, all that sort of thing. But that's really got to almost be the top line, right? Like you can use this, but use it responsibly. And this is what responsibility means.
I'll tell you where the most difficult discussion when I was working at the university. You must imagine the ramifications of large language models in university. I mean, how you can't detect that stuff, right? It's a statistic model. It's not detectable. So how do we were marking master's dissertations. How do you know that people are using or not using those models? You don't. It's very difficult. And I remember telling you last week, I had a discussion with my daughter who's in matric in South Africa at the moment. And she phoned, she said, "Oh, Dad, I want you to read this article I wrote about you." And quite honored, of course, I read it. And I read it, and it was unreal. I mean, amazing, but absolutely not written by her. And I said to her, "Did you write this?" She was like, "Yes, I did." I said, "Well, did you use ChatGPT?" And she was like, "Well, I used it to help me." I said, "Okay, cool." I said, "But, just be careful because, at the end of the day, it's not your work. So use it the right way. Use it for ideas, but write the work yourself." Anyway, fast forward a week later, she calls me, "Dad, please call me urgently." "What's wrong, Skylar? What's happened?" "Dad, they told us if they find out we've used ChatGPT, we're going to be expelled." I said, "Okay. Firstly, let me put you at rest. You won't be detected because you can't be. But let me ask you another question. Why are you worried?" And she was like, "Well, I just don't want to get kicked out of school." I said, "But if it was honestly your own work, right, you wouldn't be worried. So if your ethical side was intact and you used it the right way, you would have no problem, right?" I said, "So you need to think about those things when you use ChatGPT, because effectively it is cheating, right? If it does all the work for you, it must assist, not replace." That's really the thing.
I guess it's just kind of that human side of things and being sort of, having strong morals around it and kind of, either citing that you have used it or whatever it may be. It's there, it's pretty useful, right? But always kind of cite that it's actually been part of the work.
Well, that's a big debate at the moment. I've seen a couple of stories around people that have actually referenced ChatGPT in their dissertations. And I mean, it feels like it's the right thing to do, right? But the scientific community is in awe. I'm like, well, they're being honest. So
unusual for some. All
absolutely.
right, cool. Mark, let's move into sort of more, I guess, your home turf for the next sort of 3-4 minutes before we wrap up. AI in music, AI generated music specifically. I mean, there's obviously just in the creative world in general, the sort of movie production, there's strikes in Hollywood, all this sort of thing. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, most people watching this probably don't have much idea about AI generated music and all that sort of thing. Share us a little about that world. Like, how is it driving forward? How is it doing good things versus just kind of ripping things off and kind of
So
making people scared that artists are just going to fall away because I can just plug it into a computer and say, create me a song that looks like this. And I know we talked about that last week as well.
So this is an area that terrifies me, but excites me at the same time. Now, this is the speed that it moved, right? So I finished my dissertation last year, and mine was on AI. I built a model that made melodic techno, right? At that stage, using diffusion modeling, I could only generate around 6 to 12 seconds of audio. Pretty good. Not high quality, a little bit phasey, not something you could release, but a cool project. Fast forward now, if any of you have the time, go and check out udio.com. It's free at the moment to play with it, and you can use a text prompt to make a song. If you check out my LinkedIn, I actually shared one yesterday of a drum and bass song that I made, and I just told it, make me a drum and bass song about a dad to his daughters. And it literally wrote the lyrics, sang them with the most beautiful voice and an unbelievably put together melody, like literally a song in a box. Now, it generates 30-second clips. Then you can tell it to generate an intro, generate a chorus, generate this. And in the space of about 15 minutes, it's very close to being a hit record on radio. So sure, it's not releasable yet. I think the model is not allowing us to have the high quality release ones. But let me tell you what I love about it and what worries me. what worries me is that it's so good that, like, I'm not even sure. I mean, I've been producing for 15 years. I probably couldn't produce something that good that quickly. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It ticks all the boxes. What excites me about AI, though, is that there are other things happening besides just generating a full song. Because I truthfully don't think AI would be able to do that, because the beauty in a song is in the mistakes. So if you think about Lenny Kravitz on his guitar, it's the errors that he's making in those string plucks that give it the humanization, the tones that are slightly off. AI can't model that stuff. That's
yeah,
human.
yeah,
But what is cool is that there's what's coming up now is all sorts of AI generated instruments. So now I can kind of, I mean, I cannot sing to save my life, truthfully. I mean, you definitely
yeah.
don't want to hear
Me
me do
neither.
that.
Me
That's
neither.
it. I was at the back of the line
Yeah,
when voices were handed
yeah.
out. But
I was the only
truthfully,
person in the whole world on that the PlayStation game SingStar who sang and literally got 0 points. Not even hit one note, one bar
they're like, just
correctly.
stop.
So I'm
But
off.
but
Yeah,
but truthfully, with some of the tools now, I can sound okay. So in
yeah,
actually some of my songs, I have sung backing vocals where I needed a backing vocal, like something deeper. But then I just run it through an AI model, and it kind of changes it and puts it in tune. I mean,
yeah,
I've done a project a few weeks ago where I took some of my songs and swapped the vocals out with Justin Timberlake songs. Like in the space of 15
yeah,
minutes, it's my song being sung by a voice that sounds like Justin Timberlake. So the tools that are coming for writing, I think are going to make things cool, like really nice synthesizers, pianos, like you can model things a lot quicker. So the music making process will happen faster, definitely. But this thing about stealing music, it's going to be a problem now, vocalists, because if me, who can't sing, could model myself to be a singer, why would I need a vocalist who cost
yeah,
a lot, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
You know? So it's
Yeah, because I think
exciting.
if you look at a lot of artists out there, artists, singers, they're very presentable, let's say, obviously very good looking, all that sort of thing. Probably can't sing all that well. Auto tune kind of comes in there. Someone else is writing the song. You got a fantastic producer, someone who can kind of, the publicist, the PR machine, etc. But, on the bare bones of it, they're not a particularly good singer and probably can't play a single instrument, but they end up making a ton of money. So you kind of almost remove that from the process and you just like AI generate that and probably even do an AI generated person in the music video anyway. It's almost like a
It's
complete avatar of,
but strong. It's been
music.
done. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think back, like a guy like Justin Timberlake or Britney Spears, there's on average 27 people involved in writing one song. Now, if you think AI could probably do 25 of those jobs relatively well. So, you got to think about these things going forward. It's an
Yeah.
interesting way. But
Yeah.
another way that AI is kind of maybe in a negative manner, what's happening at the moment is gamifying their spins. So if you think on Spotify, you only get paid for every 1,000 players that you get.
Yeah.
What guys are doing is they're building with AI virtual machines that have like hundreds of phones playing their songs over and over. So while it's
Mhm.
not illegal because the songs are
Yeah.
getting played, it's unethical, for
Yeah.
you to cheat and play 30 seconds of your song 1,000 times in a row and get the money back from that. So I think a lot of Spotify, Universal, it's in anomaly detection and detecting when people are trying to cheat. So AI is doing that. And again, AI is helping them to do that as well. So,
AI versus AI, basically.
yeah, it actually is that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a very, as you say, exciting but scary era that we're moving into. This whole thing, the fact that you can create this great music and all that sort of thing, but then you can also use it to make, watch a YouTube video, millions of times and just make money off a video that you've created and watched yourself a million times and still make money. How do they protect against that? So
I saw a news article the other day. I'm not sure where it was, of how powerful deepfakes have become. So there was a woman who worked in the accounting department, and she was in charge of transferring large amounts of money for the company.
yeah.
So anyway, Teams call or Zoom came up, and her boss came onto the call, looked like her boss, sounded like her boss, said to her, "Please, would you transfer £1 million or whatever it may be?" I mean, why wouldn't you? It sounds like your boss. It looks like your boss. There's no reason for you to think it's not your boss. And it was AI generated deepfake
Mm,
voice and deepfake. And they lost £1 million from this.
yeah.
Unreal. And just to give you an idea, if you give me 15 seconds of your voice, right? 15 seconds, I can run that through a model and
Yeah.
pretty much mimic you to about 80% of that. Give me an
Yeah.
hour or two, you won't be able to distinguish.
Yeah. On that terrifying note, Mark, it's been awesome to chat to you, man.
Yeah,
Really fascinating stuff. So yeah, we'll set this up again because I think there's so much more that we can go to. But again, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And thanks for all the stuff you're doing in data, especially in South Africa. There's very few people that are making things work and run there. So it's interesting to see what you'll be doing in the future, man.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that. The community is the one that really helps us drive it forward. We just kind of facilitate it. But yeah, keep well. Good to chat to you.
Cheers, Craig. Thanks for the
Cheers,
time.
bud. Okay,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye.